My hands stable, feel labels, I turn the tables, I feel moving, just get hands up, I feel lucid, I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking, everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it's still This is Phil J. Price. And you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do. Just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and alongside with me is Big Blue. Big Blue, how you doing, my man? I can't hear you, bro.
I'm doing good.
There it is.
Yeah. I had to switch my audio. I had a bad echo.
Oh, got you.
I'm trying to fix that real quick.
Do you still have that echo?
I think I do, but it's my computer, so I'm changing the settings right now.
Got you. Well, while you get that out of the way, I'm going to say, man, something's going on with my computer here. Give me a sec, guys. I'm not seeing any comments in the comment section. Are you, Blue? Oh, there they go. They weren't showing up. Yeah, I got some. There it is. I want to say hi to everybody real quick while we can. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, members. Thank you, our subscribers, listeners, everybody that tunes in. We appreciate you.
Okay.
Did you figure it out, Blue?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, cool. Good to hear you, my man. Good to hear you. So happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday, right? TJIF. Are you working tonight, Blue?
Yeah, I work tonight.
Got you, man. Got you.
It's probably Tuesday.
It's your what?
My Tuesday.
Got you. Makes sense. That sucks because you're going to be working through the weekend.
Yes, sir.
So today what we're going to be doing is, well, first and foremost, we had a comment come through in one of our comment sections. And, I've been asking, right? If anybody has like a difference of an opinion, tell us what it is that you're thinking, and we'll go over it. We'll discuss it. And somebody did come through and, came through with something that a bit of a comment. So I think we should kind of go through it. We'll read it. I want to get your information or what your opinions and thoughts are, Big Blue, on it, and we'll break it down piece by piece. I'm not going to say who it's from or anything like that. We're not here to insult anybody or anything like that. So let's without further ado, let's pull this up real quick. Oh, wrong one. Sorry, Blue.
Okay.
It says respectfully, and I'm gonna put everything because they did get a little bit, kind of close to that disrespectful spot, but it's okay. Respectfully, I think the audience you have developed in recent months now mostly includes those who have been ready to put Bryan in front of the firing squad from the very beginning, prior to you jump to the guilty bandwagon. I'm also going to say we're going to take phone calls in the second half of the show. I frequently watched your channel to hear honest updates and discussions on guilt or innocence, but not so much afterwards. So a pool of guilt, man, this is on the opposite side of me. Hold on. A pool of guilt or innocence at this point will most likely be the guilty persuasion. And the defense has had an unorganized and chaotic dump of well over 1 million documents, videos, and pictures, which they have had the request to at least 10 times over the past year. Of course, their small team at a public defender's office cannot get through that by the summer, in addition to the 300 interviews. All right, so let's stop it right there, and then we'll break down the rest of it. Well over 1 million documents. I haven't heard that. I will say that that's something that's new to me. I'm not sure where that is from. And there.
I think they're going by defense explaining how many documents could be in the terabytes
Right.
of the information.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily a million documents, right?
But
I don't think so, at
because
least. I would hope not.
the way the defense explained it, it's like could be over 1 million documents with the 51 terabytes. There could be, I don't know how many hours they explained that it could be videos, and it's only 2 of us to watch it, or
Right.
the defense team.
Right. No, I understand that. Well, yeah, no, but this says 10, over 1 million documents, videos, and pictures. So yeah, you're probably right there. That has requested over 10 times over the past year. Now, when it comes to the request stuff, what they've been requesting, from my understanding, has been the stuff from the IGG. They wanted to know the names of the people who are related to Bryan Kohberger that led to him being prime suspect number 1. Is that not correct?
Yeah, they want to see who they were able to track him from.
Right. And so that information isn't being used against Bryan Kohberger. And I know this kind of sounds like a broken record, but if you go look at the warrants, any of the warrants, all of the warrants, never in their warrant does it say anything about an IGG. All right. If you go look at his arrest warrant, the probable cause, the arrest warrant, I don't think we can see the arrest warrant. But if you go and look at the search warrants and all the other warrants that you can see, it's not in there. And the reason being is because they're not using it against him. They're not using it in court, right? So they're asking for information that neither excludes him because, well, the IGG, what it did was basically point in a direction and say, this is the person who most likely is the person that left the DNA on the sheath. Not that it is, because they don't do a 1-for-1 comparison. They're just getting the DNA that they have and then looking at the person that's most likely. Now, most likely ain't going to get anybody arrested or a warrant or any of those things, right? And so they have to go in there, conduct their own investigation, and then from that investigation, based on what they can get, is how they pull and determine, what they're going to get in the warrants. And we see that in the search warrants for his phone pings and this and that. None of it ever says IGG. What people are getting confused is the familial DNA, which is the father's DNA that they pulled out of the trash. That is completely different than the IGG. I think that some folks are getting that confused. It's not the same thing. That was used to get warrants, to get arrests, to get searches. And that is in those documents, right? Now, she says that their small team of public defenders cannot get through that by the summer, in addition to the 300 interviews. I believe she said 400 witnesses. And I do kind of agree that would be a tall task. I think their team is a little bit larger than just 2 individuals. When you look at the paralegals and the other staff members they may have working with them that are going to go through documents and things of that nature. Do you think that it is an ample amount of time? I mean, I think that there's been other cases where multiple victims' lives have been taken and they have trial within that amount of time. Blue, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think summer would be enough time.
Yeah. I would have thought so too.
They have a lot of videos and I think what they're saying is like all the 9,000 tips, and they have to go through all that stuff too. It's going to take some time, but they've had about I want to say 9 months to work on it.
Yeah.
What have they been doing for 9 months?
Exactly. They said that they were ready to go a while ago, right? Everybody harps on what the prosecution says or law enforcement says. Ann Taylor said that they were ready months ago. Now, they're not, What does that tell you? If they were ready months ago and now they're not ready, so it's a stall, right? If you take everything that they say worth gold, right? If you're taking everything that Ann says as 100% fact, right? If you go and do that, then that means that they were ready to go back when they said they were. That how could she have done that? And ain't that perjury? Isn't that lying? So that's an example of, these attorneys kind of stretching the truth a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think people need to be leery of that just because somebody says something in court doesn't mean it's 100% accurate or in these court documents when it comes to their description of what the evidence could be at this point. All right. Now, if somebody comes in and says that, scientific fact, this is what the evidence is. Yeah. But the explanation of what that evidence is right now is going to be biased. It's going to be one-sided. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So let's continue this real quick. Don't give it to them time to adequately defend him. If Bryan did this, his name would never have come to up. I think they meant if Bryan did this, his name would have never come up. So just because he got caught means he couldn't have done it. Now, had he not gotten caught, then it could have been him. His education is in this very thing, law enforcement. Now, Big Blue, how many law enforcement officers or folks in law enforcement or lawyers have done something that they shouldn't have done or done the ultimate crime?
A lot.
A lot.
You can see that some of them get prosecuted for all their errors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't think just the mere fact of his position is evidence of innocence. You know what I mean? His study is evidence of innocence. In fact, I think it's to the contrary. When you look at the actions that he took from 100 feet away from a big picture, it definitely does appear that he's using his experience and knowledge on how investigations work to try to elude said investigation that was going up against him. All right. So let's continue. Law enforcement knew all about Bryan because he had applied to work with them. So I'm assuming this person is thinking that law enforcement is framing Bryan Kohberger. The only thing is Bryan Kohberger did not apply for Moscow Police Department. He applied for Pullman Police Department. So, Blue, do you think that just because he applied for law enforcement that makes him a good fall guy?
No. I think his actions, if they wanted to say, his losing his TA position and mental status at that point, that would be more of a fall guy, not just because he applied.
Right. I don't understand why his mere application is if you're looking for a fall guy, right? Let's just say you're a police department, right? And you're looking to blame something on somebody. You're going to go to the application list for police officers instead of the criminal records that you have against people in the community who have been, could have been known to have done this. I mean, if you're looking for a fall guy, you have that one guy whose life was taken by SWAT before Kohberger's name came out and before any of those things. They could have pinned it on Kopeka. He's passed away. He threatened his roommates. He is going through a PTSD moment. You have excuses for everything to say it was him. Or how about the guy who attempted to murder his wife a couple of days later after the murders with a knife and cut himself, that lived about 5 blocks away, who, was a convicted murderer? Are those two guys too law-abiding and too, not out of the norm that couldn't have fallen better or been a better fall guy than a PhD student, you're going to go and tell me that instead of looking at all of the people you've arrested, you're going to go and look at the people you're trying to hire. Does that make any sense to anybody? Please, if you believe that that is the case, that they rather look at the PhD guy versus, the guy, the convicted murderer who stabbed himself and attempted to stab his wife a few days later, and then the guy that they also took out because he was threatening his roommates. And I don't know the whole backstory. I haven't looked into it, but SWAT went in there and took his life. If there was something to that situation, right? Because the thoughts are that, I think there's been theories that, that shooting was, maybe perhaps a bad shooting. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I have no idea. But even if it was, don't you think to cover your tail, you would make him look like the guy who committed the quadruple homicide? So that way you're looked as the hero, not the villain. So please tell me this. Who literally thinks that? Yeah, Mitch, Mitch girl, this might be literally a conspiracy channel, Bigfoot, aliens, and UFOs. And it's funny when that is more believable than what you're thinking when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. So yeah, it's crazy that the conspiracy guys that believe in Bigfoot can see this better and clearer than some people. But I digress. But please, are you one, Mitch girl, that thinks that law enforcement is looking at PhD students applying for police officer positions over criminals, if there is the fall guy to go along with this? Can you let us know? Because I don't think that makes a lot of logic. Don't make sense. There's zero logic. Blue, what do you think? Do you think that there's a world where that is real?
And by going by the evidence, no. They would have had internal affairs review and everything, because it was, how would they become driving around at that time?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm driving, so he wasn't in fear of his life.
No. And real quick, Paula says it's not a good comparison, but it is a good comparison because those are people that were literally there in the area and around that time that, everybody looked at as a suspect before Bryan Kohberger got arrested. Am I wrong in that, Blue?
I mean, I don't see how one of them would be part of it at all.
No, I'm not saying that they are involved. What I'm saying is if law enforcement was going to pin it on somebody, right, and the goal is just to pin it on anybody, right? Because why? Because Idaho, University needs this to be solved real quick. So they're they want it to be pinned on anybody. You're going to look past the convicted murderer. You're going to look past the person whose life was just taken away for threatening their roommates. And you're going to go to the person who's going in a PhD program, has a master's degree, and is applying to be a police officer.
Yeah.
Like, that world doesn't make sense.
I mean, it doesn't. They probably, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It just doesn't. And those are the facts. Those are the people that were around in that area. Those were the folks that everybody thought was the person that committed this crime or could have committed this crime before Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Those that are so quick to defend, Brent Kopacka because Bryan Kohberger has been arrested were the same people who were almost castrating him as being the guy before Bryan Kohberger got arrested. As soon as somebody else became, arrested for it and things like that, then things kind of changed. So you guys were all saying it was him until Bryan Kohberger got arrested. Now let's continue this. All right, Brian, in the PCA, it does say as seen from the doorway. No, it doesn't. It says when viewed from the door, and this is in reference to the probable cause affidavit when it's talking about where the knife location was. It says that the knife sheath, or not the knife sheath location. It states that the knife sheath was on Mogen's right side, and then in parentheses it said when viewed from the door. Not that the sheath could be viewed from the door, that when you're looking at the scene from the door, it could be seen on Mogen's right side. All right. So no blood trail leading from the home, and an 8-hour delay would leave some to believe that the killer stayed in the house, cleaned up, staged the crime, and have had to walk to the house since they lived within walking distance and stayed to blend in. So the white Elantra that just so happens to be driving around, it has nothing to do with the crime. Why? Because it's probably Bryan Kohberger. He just so happened to be driving around. He just so happened to not be driving during the time that the crime was being committed. And he just so happens to be driving out of there at a high rate of speed after the crime is happening. Now, when it comes to what people think about how a person should act, let's go back to something real quick. And he didn't leave their room or whatever room they were in. If they were in the same room, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that either. So I don't know. But 201, you're on the air. What's going on? Who are we talking to? 201, you still there? I think 201 dropped off. Let's see. We're going to have somebody else coming in. 847, you're on the air. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys? Oh my gosh, I got through. I'm so excited. Love your show.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
that. You guys
that.
are just adorable. Yeah, honestly. You treat everybody so great and with a lot of respect. What I wanted to say is that I wanted to give my situation so maybe there's a better understanding of the poor girls. Years back, I was involved in a horrific home invasion, where the police didn't even believe us. It was me and my fiance, and this guy walked in with a gun and a knife and a mask. And the funny part is I ran into the closet. I had my phone on me, and the last thing I thought of was to call 911. So immediately he's like, you better not be calling 911. It didn't even dawn on me. It didn't even dawn on me to go out the back door. Whereas my fiance would have gone out the back door, but he had to follow me, couldn't leave me behind. Anyway, long story longer, he threatened our lives 1,000 times. He was there over an hour. And he said that if we call 911, his girlfriend's a dispatcher, and he'll know and he'll come back and kill us because he has our IDs and yada, yada, yada. And his brother just got out of jail and he's even worse. I mean, the threats were like nonstop. So we never called 911. We actually called a friend. He came back 3 times to check that we weren't tied and bound. I mean, when I mean that, I mean that. He is serving 3 life sentences. Point is, we never called 911. We did call a friend. We were scared out of our minds. We never went back to the house again, ever. I won't even go in that area. And this has been since 2000. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have his court till 2004. So it took 4 years. So this might take a while.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Isn't that awful? So,
yeah.
I mean, it affected me so bad. So I really, really feel bad for these girls. I can't even imagine. It still affects me to this day. I have radar behind my head. It's like constantly looking at everybody and never trusting anything. And what I wanted to say is at that point, the last thing on my mind is that I was involved in a home invasion. I didn't even think it was real. I thought it was one of my fiance's friends playing a practical joke on us. And he noticed a knife. When I noticed a guy, I only zoomed in on the blue eyes coming out of the mask, and I saw the gun. I never saw a knife. So that's why they didn't believe us, because our stories were conflicting. Like, how could I have not seen a knife? Easy, I just didn't. He's more perceptive. And yeah, so, you know, it's funny how things work and how you think. Now I'm so much more prepared. Of course I would run out. Of course I would call 911. Of course I would do things so much different. But when it's the first time and you didn't follow true crime and you didn't think about crime and you lived a pretty safe life, you never would assume anything like this could happen to you. That's one. Secondly, I'd like to say that I do believe Bryan's 100% guilty.
I left that last part there. But this is a person who went through something very horrific and called friends before 911. Had the opportunity to call 911 during the act. Saw somebody, you know, saw the person and didn't even see the knife. Saw a gun, but not the knife. Now, if we go back and talk about where Dylan was in that moment, you know, it was dark. She was under the influence of alcohol, most likely, you know, drinking the night before. You have, you know, people that go in and out of that house. It's not uncommon. Right. And, you know, you have people that are yelling. I mean, there was JLR was out there and he had put his phone up and you can hear people screaming from all over the place in that neighborhood, like literally screaming. So I'm not, you know, trying to make an excuse for her or not. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are looking at her and judging her based off of like 3 sentences in the PCA of numerous statements that she's probably made and numerous statements that she's made and probably a lot more than just 3 sentences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, all that rest of the evidence will come out later during the trial.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
For the jury to see.
Exactly. You know, that is true. And, you know, like I said, I mean, we don't know what all that is yet. You know, I don't know what else she has said. You know what I mean? So, let me see. Let's go back to. Oh, somebody's calling. We're not taking calls just yet. We're going to be taking calls here in a minute. All right. Let me pull this back up. All right. So it said here, during the first few days, as the investigation began, and with no DNA analysis yet, they cleared all of those who normally should have been with no DNA, they cleared all of those who normally should have been considered suspects. Now, this person is assuming that they know everything that law enforcement knew, did, and didn't do during those few weeks of an investigation. This person is assuming that everything that the media has and that, you know, us creators put out there is all the information that is there. That is not the case. So for one, they have no idea when the DNA analysis began. From what I understand, I think they started that day, started getting the evidence, started putting it into CODIS, started doing those things. So immediately, it's not something you sit on, right? You have somebody that just committed a quadruple homicide. If that person is in the system, has committed a crime before, you can take that person off the streets very quickly. That's not something that you say, all right, you know what, let's make it till Monday at 8:00. All right. Because of DM's behavior, I think that her account holds water. I would seem that perhaps drugs were involved. It only takes 1 or 2 strategically placed people to accomplish throwing blame on Bryan. I think she meant, I don't think her account holds water. Okay. It would seem that perhaps drugs were involved. I mean, where do you get that there were drugs involved? You know, I know Kim called in and she called in to us. The only thing that we did was verify who she was. You know, her name was Kim. She had a daughter. And her daughter dated somebody that was playing football for the University of Idaho at that time. It's about as much as we can verify. And she said that was considered a party house in this. You know, we had Dave also come up, who we were able to verify that he was a student at the University of Idaho, but the rest of his claims were unverifiable. There was no receipts or any of those things. And in fact, and I've said this before, that I found out where he was working at the time, and that his shift didn't start until 11:30, not 9:30, like he had indicated on Sundays. So those things were, they didn't jive. And I've said these things and I've talked about these things before. But all right, let's see. So outside of them, where does the drugs really take place? Because there's a young brunette lady in one of the videos, the body cam videos. She's wearing a headpiece, and she kind of looks like Emma Bailey, but it's not the same person. They just, I think there's more than one person that wears a headband on their head. So, and even if it was, there's no indication, there's no evidence, there's no proof that they did anything together. Right? So I don't understand where this whole drug thing still keeps going. If this crime was committed by drugs, Big Blue, what kind of evidence could you expect to find, if this was drug related?
It just depends on if they ran dogs through there, if there was any paraphernalia. Yeah.
Maybe.
Or just looking for paraphernalia.
You know what? You know what I just thought of? A lot of these guys are saying that is completely different. It just came to my mind, but I don't want to miss it. The same people that say that there was no sign of cleaning agent and there was no DNA in the car, Bryan Kohberger couldn't have done it, are the same people blaming Dylan and Bethany, and somehow they cleaned up the entire house in less amount of time with less experience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, Blue?
I mean,
and also bleach dissipates in 24 hours. So if Bryan Kohberger used bleach on his car 7 weeks later, it's not going to be there. If Bethany and Dylan used bleach in that house 12 hours later, is it going to be there?
The police would smell the residue of cleaning. Mm-hmm. And if they clean as well as everybody's saying they are, they wouldn't have found so many DNA samples.
Right. So yeah, so people are saying that 8 hours is a long time, plus others were summoned, and it's a long time to call 911. They somehow cleaned up the entire thing, didn't leave a speck of evidence, and yet Bryan Kohberger couldn't have done the same in 7 weeks with his car.
Yeah, I think it's just these crazy theories out there.
Yeah, it's not just crazy theories. It's theories that don't make sense. If they cleaned up the area, there would be evidence of that cleaning. They were there within hours of this happening. It was within the day. They weren't there the next day, the next week, 7 weeks later. That day. All right. Now, we'll leave it at that. They were there that day. And that evidence would have been there that day.
Yeah, there were no signs of cleaning really. I mean, we haven't seen the floors, but we can see through the evidence photos that inside the kitchen, there was, evidence of the party the night before. Simple dishes. We see the takeout food on the counter in the Starbucks cups. I think it was Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. There was a cup out there. I know for sure it was Jack in the Box.
Yeah, no, there was a bunch of stuff there. Wayne said, you can remove bloody, fully anything attempted to be cleaned would have lit up like a Christmas tree with forensic search. Right, but you're also assuming that somebody got killed inside of Bryan Kohberger's car and they were actively bleeding. Nobody was bleeding when Bryan Kohberger got back in his car. There's a good possibility he wasn't even wearing the same clothes that he was wearing when he was inside the house committing the crime. All right. You know, you can take clothes off and wipe down before getting into a vehicle. Thus, you know, not putting that stuff everywhere, right? Minimizing where you have to clean.
Somebody would have to do a demonstration video out there. I'm pretty sure somebody has, you know, of somebody potentially using this.
Paul asking if I can explain the lack of DNA in the house. There isn't a lack of DNA in the house. There is, what they had said was there was 3 unidentified DNA in the house, right? Where the area where the bodies were. It didn't say that there wasn't any other DNA in the house. I was just talking about the specific areas where those bodies supposedly were, where 2 of them were. One of them was in a glove outside. All right. So never does it say that there wasn't any other DNA in the house from, you know, the kids that were partying the night before. I mean, there was cans, there was bottles, there was the beer pong table that was still full of stuff, the Jack in the Box bag. There was numerous Bud Light lime bottles across on a white table that was in there. And so numerous amount of DNA that was in that house. They were just referencing the 3 that were unknown. You had 1 inside the glove and 2 that were in the area around where the bodies were somewhere. You know, I found it suspicious that they were super specific about where one DNA, you know, piece was, which was inside a glove outside of the house, and real vague about the other piece, other than it was just somewhere around where the body was. Now, I'll tell you this, if it was DNA found on, you know, the legs, body, hair, face, you know, private areas, Ann Taylor would have definitely brought that up.
Yeah.
Let's see.
The other thing was that what I was trying to say earlier is like they been showing that demonstration how fast you can take off the Dickies overalls and booties and gloves. Right?
I mean, not only that, like a demonstration of how long it takes to get inside a house and walk up a flight of stairs and come down a flight of stairs. Like, you know, people that think that 9 or 10, which I think it's 11 minutes that he was in that house. 11 minutes is too small of a time, you know, for him to get out and walk into the house. You know, the first thing I ask is, do you think he parked like 5 miles away, like how, or a mile away and like jog there? Because he was doing a 6-mile jog. You know, did that cover 6 minutes of that? No, he went literally a few feet. All right. Now, once you enter into the building, how many feet, and the house was small, how many feet do you think, or how many steps do you think it took him to go from the glass door to the end of the kitchen? Probably 4, 4 steps. And, you have probably about 8 to 10, stairs up, and then turn around another 8 to 10. And I think I'm being generous there. And you're up there. I mean, you're literally there in less than a minute from the time that you exit the door to the time that you're opening the first victim's door upstairs.
I mean,
let's see.
You could have ran a mile.
Yeah.
In that time.
Yeah. It says drugs were involved. It only takes 1 or 2 strategically placed people to accomplish throwing blame on Bryan. No, because what are they going to do? Where's the DNA coming from? And when did they plant the DNA? We know that the Idaho State lab was there. The Idaho State forensic team was there. There's pictures of them. They collected everything that day. They collected that knife sheath. That knife sheath went to the Idaho State lab where the DNA was entered, was discovered. The STR profile was created, and that profile was entered into CODIS. So that, planting of Bryan's DNA had to have happened before officers were summoned to that house. Where would they have gotten the DNA? Him, by his own admission, was out and about that night by himself. So nobody went up to him and, rubbed his face or anything and got his DNA on the sheath. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll leave it at that. Let's continue. So, Bryan's garbage would have been a perfect place to get a few skin cells, which could have been placed on the sheath. But why? I mean, you can say that, hey, Brian's neighbor 3 houses down, has garbage. Would be a perfect place to get skin cells off their sheet, off their trash too.
Yeah, but by that time, they had already got his name from the DNA.
By when? December? So they got his name from the DNA before they collected his skin cells to plant. Yeah. Oh, that doesn't make sense either. Are they time travelers? That don't make sense. So Brian's garbage will be a perfect place. They weren't found at the Idaho lab, but were found no, that's not true at all. That is 100% false. They were found, and it is stated in the probable cause affidavit that the Idaho State Lab detected and created the STR profile. What was sent to the second lab in Texas, to Othram, was the DNA information so that they can run an IgG on their own, right? Because at that point, they probably still had law enforcement techniques that they had to go through before the FBI could involve their IgG protocols, right? For them to do it. It's in the paperwork. It says, in the defense's paperwork or in the state's paperwork that the IgG by the FBI cannot be utilized until there is no suspects. There is no other law enforcement techniques that can be utilized basically when you have no other option. All right. So that doesn't mean that's policy. That's not law. That doesn't mean that Othram or a private lab can't do it themselves. And that doesn't mean that, the FBI cannot violate their own policy and that would somehow affect Bryan Kohberger's deal here, his trial. It's not illegal. It's against their policy, their work policy. All right. So, and the reason why they do that probably is because if not, then every law enforcement agency would be asking for it all the time. So they want them to do their own work first. All right. So a chain of custody would be very important. All right. So I spoke to Ms. Vargas, the defense's witness when it comes to the IgG. It's by an email, what is sent to them. It's a series of numbers and names that they go through when they get that. They're not getting a Petri dish with DNA in it. Petri dish. I said Petri.
I'm going to say, well, not even that, but I'm going to say, even if they got a Petri dish, some of the officers wouldn't know how to break down the DNA.
Right.
Take some specific, highly trained scientists or,
yeah.
Whoever,
I can't hear what you're saying, man. I don't know if it's mumbling or if it's the audio. But this person says that the transfer skin cells are actually the only real evidence and should not even be put in trial. So here's the thing. Where was that? Well, one, do they even know that that's what it was, skin cells? I believe it was called single source DNA, meaning that it wasn't mixed with anybody. Meaning if it was transferred there by somebody else, you would expect to see a mixture. Right? Also, it means that it's inside the button, right? What else do we know? We know that the sheath is facing down, and the sheath is made out of leather. Leather is usually typically waterproof. I know that I got my leather boots, and if I put them in the water, unless I got a hole in them, my socks stay dry. So blood and things like that wouldn't have gotten the under button of the snap as bloody as you guys would think. Now, a lot of people have been commenting that thing should have been covered in DNA and blood and this and that if it was under the body. And the PCA doesn't say that it wasn't. It says that there was a single source of DNA in the buttons of the snap. Not that it was clean or that there was no blood on it or anything like that. Just at that location, there's some transferred DNA, if you want to call it that. Now, the other thing is, Blue, How hard do you think it would be to transfer DNA inside of a button snap? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things where just to get it to slide in there, you would have to know that you actually have it on the time spot that you're trying to transfer it over.
Right,
I
right.
don't even know how they would transfer it.
But if it was like a situation where it was an accidental transfer, right? How likely is transfer DNA going to get inside the button snap? Like that takes somebody touching it inside the button snap. Now, if it was on the outside of a door, on the handle, something that is, accessible through, everyday touching, like you can rub, your pants, even if it was like on a pair of pants or something, like, and there's DNA on the outside of the pants, you can pass by somebody and get DNA. It's not that; it's inside the button snap. Huh. You know?
Yeah, it's a crazy spot to try to plant it.
Right. And if you're going to plant evidence, like why not plant like hair or sweat or something else, blood? Like, there was a red stain on his pillowcase. It's probably, it came back for blood. It came back not the victim. So it was, like we said, it was probably a nosebleed.
A nosebleed or a pimple.
Yeah.
Something that, most likely nosebleed about 80% of the time.
Right. So when it comes to the chain of custody being very important, and here's the other thing, when it comes to what happened at the second lab, and then from there, they ran out of suspects, and then the FBI decided to come in and assist by utilizing their techniques to complete an IgG family tree. And that's how they ended up pointing at Bryan Kohberger. So chain of custody really isn't important in that. But the other thing is too, is it's like I said earlier, it's a futile point. It's just going in a circle. Everything that I could point out, those who could have pointed blame towards him knew all about Bryan from his application, what car he drove, where he lived, a background check. And what about that would make you think that he is a prime guy for the fall guy? Like, what you're saying here is that if they got the car that he drove and they planted that evidence on the sheath, that what they did was they wanted to ruin Bryan Kohberger's life because he applied for the police department, and that the victims were collateral damage. Because everything was done to frame Kohberger, the car, the DNA. Hell, they probably got somebody that matches his height and weight and has bushy eyebrows too, right?
That's the theory. The sad part about it, we lose all in the fact that 4 innocent people lost their life.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of grieving families out there.
Yeah. Oh, you're right, man. You're right. This goes on to say, if Bryan had done this, we wouldn't know it. There it is. It's a love affair. They love him, like sexually. Like this is an attraction. Even the male Kohbergers. How many times? How many times?
Bushy eyebrows.
Right. How many times have you heard somebody who's defending Kohberger, who happens to be a guy, say, he's not that bad looking? Like they're talking about his appearance in a sexual manner to determine whether or not he's an incel or not, and how attractive he would be to the opposite sex.
And I can imagine in prison when they're braiding people's hairs, they really braiding his eyebrows.
All right. So let's continue this. Bryan, okay, he would have established an alibi in advance. So because he doesn't have an alibi He's innocent. I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be mean. But this is the most logical. This is the most. I hope you guys understand this. This is the most logical argument that I have heard. All right. He would have had to. So because he didn't have an alibi, he's innocent. All right. So with his education, he didn't use his own phone, drive his own car. There it is. There it is. Drive his own car. I knew it was going to come up somewhere there. Angel D, I know you know you're laughing with this one. He drove his own car. All right. Let's break that down. Big Blue. If Bryan Kohberger committed this crime, and the theory is that he would have used somebody else's car, what is one way of doing that? Where would he get the other car?
I mean, it's either, at that time, the only options we would have is rent one, borrow one from a friend, or use the Toro app.
All right, so let's go with the rent one. That leaves a paper trail. You don't think that law enforcement would have gone to the rental companies, the rental cars, and say, hey, you have any white Elantras in stock? And not just there, not just in the area. They're going to call Enterprise and ask them if they have, white Elantras in the area with their GPS thing that's going on. All right. They're going to ask rent a car, those things. They're going to get warrants for those things. Now, because he didn't rent the vehicle, those warrants aren't accessible to us or aren't out there because they're not going to be used against him in court because he didn't rent a vehicle. All right. The next one you said is borrow it. All right. So Bryan Kohberger lived there for a few months, like 3, right? From out of town, kind of a loner, supposedly. Dad had to ask people to be his friends. He would have had to have like who is he borrowing the car from? Probably people that he's associated or close with most. Probably people that he's either works with or goes to school. Since he's a TA, it's probably the same. And those people are in criminal justice and want to be in law enforcement one day. Are those people that you think you can rent a vehicle from, Blue, and they're not going to tell on you?
I would definitely say something for you.
Right. So,
like what disclaimer says there, it's just an opinion, speculation, and some theories that are out there.
100%.
He's innocent, so he's proven guilty by his peers.
Right. We're just going down the theories that people say that claim he's innocent, and just kind of seeing if there's any validation to it. We're not going down the theories of anything else. So the last one you said, Blue, was probably what? Stealing the car, is that right? Okay.
Stealing it.
Yeah. So stealing the car. So now he has to get away with 2 crimes. All right.
Drinking Dayquil.
Yeah. He'd have to get away with 2 crimes. The stolen vehicle and the murders. And the thing is too, like, if you get pinned for one, right, either the stolen vehicle or the murders, you just gave solid evidence on the other one and sealed your case. Because if, let's just say, let's take Bryan Kohberger out of this. If, somebody committed this crime and there was a white Elantra without a front license plate, and then you went and you start investigating this or whatever, and you find out that this other car was stolen, right, a white Elantra in the area, and you're not going to look and see, if there's any connection between the 2 cases. I'm pretty sure you are if you're in law enforcement. And then, if they catch you on one, they're like, hey, you stole this vehicle. And then, week, month, 2 years later, or, he's only there for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 11 weeks later, this crime was committed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you would definitely get busted if you stole it, So stealing's out of it, borrowing's out of it, renting's out of it. You're going to go buy another one? Well, then he owns it. So, like, I hate when people say he wouldn't have driven his own car. Like, what other car would he have driven? Was he going to go and rent one? Was he going to loan one? Was he going to steal one? What would he have done?
Man, if we were smart, like we said it last time we've done these theories,
What's that?
he would have either biked or ran. But unfortunately, he chose to drive around that night. Like he admitted, his alibi is he was driving his own car that night.
Yeah. And somehow whoever framed him would have had to have known that he does that. I'm not sure that's in his law enforcement application, because that's where they got all his information from.
Maybe they're playing for overnight and say, I drive around at,
Right.
nighttime and I'm a good driver.
Yeah. Let's see. Everything that I could point out, those who could have pointed blame towards him knew about him from his application. Oh, yeah. Okay. With the education, he didn't. All right. Yeah, that's right. His own car. Committed the crime, parking lot full of cars, knowing that the doors was unlocked. Well, I'm sure he didn't know that the doors were unlocked. There was about 12 of the times that he was in the area at odd hours of the night. Maybe those were the times that the door was locked. And the one time it wasn't locked, unfortunately, something happened. Killed two of them while the second one made no noise to alert the other. The second one made no noise to alert the other residents, allowing them to flee or call 911. So here's the thing. There's audio about 50 feet away. There's no screaming. There's no nothing that happens. There's a thud and there's whimpering. Somebody committed this crime. Just because there isn't evidence of like sounds and stuff doesn't mean that it's made up. I mean, are you thinking that it's made up crime? I mean, you're saying that Bryan Kohberger couldn't have committed this crime because there would have been noise?
I mean, I want to say look at the evidence of other cases.
Hey, you muted the wrong one.
Oh, man. Okay, there you go.
There it is.
Was I echoing?
Yeah. Yeah, don't be insulting anybody either. Hold on. No need. I mean, if somebody has a different opinion, it is what it is. We're just kind of walking through what these theories are, but there's no need to be insulting to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to say was get back into it. Look at the other cases where somebody came in, committed a horrible crime, and only killed one of the family members. Nobody heard anything.
Yeah.
And these other people that were in the house, some of them admitted of going out the night before and having a few drinks. I mean, depends on how many drinks you had. You go to bed, you're out for a while. People can try to wake you up and you won't. So that's why I think there was no screams. No.
There will. I mean, if there was, it would have been picked up.
Scream.
Right. And if there was, it would have gotten picked up by the audio that was able to pick up the whimpering. I mean, if it can pick up whimpering and a thud, it would pick up screams. Don't you think?
I mean, yeah, it would have. If it would pick up the whimpering, it would. It's like we don't know how much they drank that night. We don't know if he covered their mouths before he stabbed them. I mean, that's all stuff you can do. If they do that to the person next to you in bed, and you feel like somebody's hitting you, but it could be, oh man, this person kicks in their sleep. You're not gonna know the difference.
Yeah.
Unless they like punch you or hit you really hard.
Well, in this scenario, we know a couple of things, right? We know that in the upstairs bedroom, when you walk in, the bed, from what I understand, was immediately to the left, up against the corner, right? And you had two of the girls laying down. Now, based on what the information, I'm going to do my little psychic thing. So based on some information that no, I'm not going to say it. Based on the fact that how the PCA says that where the sheath was located, from when viewed from the door, and how Miss Goncalves had described her daughter being up in the corner, crouched over, that tells me that their heads were facing away from the door, feet towards the door, and that Kaylee was on the inside and Maddie was on the outside. I strongly suspect that I think there was a blow there to probably the chest or back area, depending on which way Maddie's facing. And I think that it's very much likely. The coroner said that the blow that was the fatality one was to the chest area, to the torso. So it's going to hit something vital that's going to happen quickly, so that there's no screams. What are some organs that you're going to hit that's going to happen so quickly that you're not going to be able to scream? You're the medical professional, Blue. If somebody hits somebody with a knife in the torso, where are some places that they won't scream?
I mean, when you get stabbed anywhere, you might scream. So I want to say one of the quickest things to do is go for the heart, stop it from beating. That will stop somebody. But I don't know. I don't know any of the.
What about a lung?
Ones
yeah. What about a lung? If a lung collapse?
I mean, if the lung collapse, it depends if it's just one. They start gargling, you're suffocating.
Right.
You're gonna make some noise.
Right. But you're not seeing. You're not going to be able to hear a loud, like scream, like belching, scream if somebody's one lung has collapsed. You might hear, like you said, gargling and some noises, but not a full on scream, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can still, because you got to force the air out. There's still some air in your system right when it happened.
Right. I don't know, man. I think if somebody gets hit in the lung the right way, put it. I've seen somebody with a collapsed lung several times. I was a first responder. It happens, in car accidents. It happens in other type of things. I've seen somebody who's got a gunshot wound to the chest. There wasn't much talking. There wasn't much vocalization in those instances. They're trying. There was coughing and blood, but there wasn't the ability to scream, in my experience. All right. So, and he goes on to say, we all know this scenario driven by the girl who waited 8 hours to report the crime while staying in the house with 4 massacred bodies and blood. Doesn't hold water. My vote is not guilty at this point, and most likely someone framed Bryan Kohberger. All right. Somebody framed Bryan Kohberger. That's what she says. I don't know. But let's get the phone line going on if anybody wants to call in. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Give me a second. Let's try to give those that think that Bryan Kohberger was framed or have a different opinion a chance first. As long as you're not, disrespectful or, come off loud and screaming and can have an adult conversation, we'll keep you on. Come in kind of hooting and hollering and acting kind of crazy. You won't be on here long. So phone number is 210-209-9435. Let us know when you're on.
I was thinking of some theory. I'm not going to say it, but I'll read the chat. I forgot already. I'll see if I remember here in a minute.
Yeah. 310, you're on the line.
Hey guys, let me just turn my TV down real quick.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. I've been watching your show for a while, and also I'm a fellow Steelers fan from Pittsburgh, so
yeah,
go Steelers and all that. Yeah, but I've been listening to you guys for a while, and I think you guys have really good thoughts, and obviously, you're an expert at different aspects of this.
Mhm.
But one thing that, there are a couple things that I found curious. One of them was, in the beginning, they told us there was a car that we had to watch for, but that's just a car they told us to look for. We don't know if there's any connection to this at this point.
Mhm.
Also, when they were talking about the knife sheath, the thing that I found curious about that was, if I'm not mistaken, you could correct me, in the very beginning, they said they didn't find any traces of DNA on that knife, so they went to take it to another facility to have tested, right?
Yeah, that was.
So then with their process, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I can tell you where that was from. That was from Mr. Bloom from the Airmail article.
Okay.
He said that
Right.
they couldn't find anything. There was no match or something of that nature,
Right.
and that it had to be sent to Othram. However, I think he was mistaken, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember hearing that report, and I wasn't sure. I knew I definitely heard it. And then the other question I had was, if you have such a minuscule sample, like, how do you then splice it again and retest it? You know what I mean? It's not like it was, according to what they were saying, it was a very small amount underneath that little button snap on the knife sheath. So how do you do that? And also, without it being contaminated, you're transporting it from, point A to point C, so to me, I found that curious also.
Right. So, run that by me, that last part again.
About the DNA.
So,
How
small it was. All right. So, the first thing is, I had a medical forensic death investigator come on the channel once, and she has.
I think I saw that, but I didn't see the whole show. Yeah.
She has a master degree in forensics and things like that. And basically, what she explained to me is, when you get a small amount of DNA, you replicate it. That's what the STR, the R means in STR, is replicate. So they're able to take a small amount and duplicate it multiple times, and then use those duplications to test for certain things.
Okay. And then the other thing we keep talking about, and I think you brought this up once, was that, Kohberger could run a 6-minute mile and likes to run.
Mm-hmm.
There was a case in LA where there was somebody who was like a manager at this restaurant, and this guy rode a bike, like just a regular old bicycle that people steal bikes in LA all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So just took this bike and was waiting for someone, and then he unalived that person, and they never found out who did it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it seems like he would either running would have been easy, I think, especially when you're running a 6-minute mile, or riding a bike, because at the same time, it's kind of a nondescript thing. Even in bad weather, I think you could probably get away with that. And I would think that someone who supposedly is so smart would have thought to do something like that versus, and then he could discard his stuff anywhere, on the way, and no one would have been able to find out, or as opposed to driving his own car.
Right. Taking a bicycle, and that's a pretty big risk. If you're riding a bicycle at that hour at night, and you got to put yourself in the shoes of the killer, right? He's walking out of that house. Yeah. He sees Dylan Mortenson. He doesn't know who it is. He sees somebody there. He's probably heard somebody yell. He had just came from, or the vehicle had just came from behind the police department. So this person knows exactly how far the police department is, and the response time that would get there. He'd have to get out of there pretty quickly. If you're in a bicycle, your dead is done. You're even getting out of that area.
What if he did it like using both? So he runs to a point, has the bike staged somewhere, then he runs to wherever that is, and then he takes off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I thought that could possibly work. And then the last thing, I don't want to take up too much. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so that was one of my theories early too. But, he could have biked and ran.
Exactly.
That way he can not use his car. He was smart enough.
And I think that's just a, quick logical. And then I'm just gonna say one last thing, and I'm gonna let someone else talk. But I think the other thing that is curious to me too is that, look, a lot of people believe this is a slam dunk, and if it's really, really, really a slam dunk, like we got you on camera walking in and out of the building, then you would think we don't need. There's all this. He's can have due process, but if somebody comes up to him and says, "Bryan, we have you dead to rights walking through the door and leaving, and we know where your car was," like all this, they said it may be 20, 25 and everything. It's like all that stuff is out the window. If they have you like that, then you have to believe that we're always talking about there's all this other evidence and all the terabytes of information and everything, but I don't know. You know what I mean? For me, like, honestly, I am not 100% like, oh, he didn't do it. And I'm not 100% that he did.
Right.
I'm one of those people, I'm a wait and see kind of person where I want to hear more and see more. I listen to people like you and some of the other channels who have an expertise on analyzing things, and then I make my decision from there.
100%. And there's nothing wrong with, being undecided or wanting to see everything. That's kind of where, majority of people should be at. I think that because of everything that's out there, that it's most likely him. I can never, until he's convicted, I'm not going to say that it's 100% him. I've never 100% said it was him, but I do got a question for you. So,
sure.
We're talking about the evidence and the tactics and this, that, and the third. If you had committed this crime and you had been arrested for this and you wanted to save your life, what would you do? Would you be prepared to go to court right away, or would you try to stall?
I would, if it was me, I would guess I would probably want to go to court right away. But at the same time, like, I don't know, this is such a crazy case, and I thought about, because I actually asked my girlfriend about this once. I said, what if something happened and neither one of us had an alibi? What do you do? Right? Like, the only alibi is I was sleeping or I was playing video games or something, in the bedroom, and something happened. And then people say, well, where were you? Oh, no. Shh. Come on, Jack. I'm sorry. So, no, but for me, it's like, what would you do? And I think a lot of us can't even reconstruct what we did over a day period, or a few hours, like step by step. And then when you're asked those questions, I could see how someone could get, like get it wrong or get it, put themselves in a bad spot. That's why they always tell you to get representation before you say anything. So for me, I would definitely need to, especially if I had no one to vouch for me. If I had no one to vouch for me, I would definitely need to, if I just told you guys, hey man, I was playing video games not video games, because that you could probably track that online, but I was reading a book or I went to sleep or something during that period. People are going to have questions. They're going to say, come on, man, really? And so then what do? You just kind of hope that, the truth comes out, right? But at the end of the day, you don't have an alibi in the eyes of the rest of the world. And when Kohberger said that he was driving around, I know plenty of people who, to clear their heads, if they have like a motorcycle or if they have like a car that they like to drive around, and especially if he's kind of a loner person, I could see someone doing that. So for me, to answer your question, long answer, because that's pretty long, it's just I probably would want to do it right away, but I would definitely take time and a pause to try to, be certain about what I'm saying, because it's easy to take whatever you say and have it used against you.
Right. No, I understand that. For me, I think that if you're willing to wait and stuff like that, you have nothing to lose, especially if your life is on the line. And, the longer this goes, the longer the stalling, maybe perhaps it's out of people's, minds, maybe perhaps the more likely you can get a better plea, you know, in that type of situation. But you're right, you know, as far as
Right.
somebody driving around by themselves, you know, that being a situation. But what do you think the odds are, right, that you're going to be driving around with your phone off at the same time a murder is happening?
Yeah, I thought about that. You know what I think? Two things. I think, because this happened to me. So I thought it may have happened differently. Sometimes you have your phone all day. Your battery life is at like 9%. You know you need to make a call. And so you just shut it down. And sometimes it'll charge up just a little bit. And sure, it's very coincidental that happened at that period of time. But for me, I think it's entirely possible that the person shut their phone off to save battery life in case they need to make a call or something like that, as opposed to it just being like, oh, it's just, I just shut it off.
Right. Now,
if he's telling the truth.
Right.
If he's telling the truth.
All right. Let's say he is. What are the chances that the person outside of him just having, okay, so he has his phone off. You know, do you think the chances increase or decrease when it comes to what's the likelihood that the person that is committing this crime also drives a white Elantra, also without a front license plate?
Okay, so originally I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from Pittsburgh, right? So immediately when everybody was saying, oh, what's going on? This is like nefarious. Why doesn't he have a license plate? I said, well, none of us have license plates on the front in Pittsburgh, right? That's just not how we don't have to do that based on our laws. But I will say this, that, you know, what was the account? There's 22,000 of these cars that are rolling around. And so the only reason why we even care about this car is because someone told us a long time ago that they saw a video. They had a video and a screenshot of a car that was speeding down the way around that time. And after that, that car became important to us.
Right.
Now, here's the thing I thought about, right? So let's just say that his alibi checks out. His alibi could actually exonerate him about driving around if he's driving around at the time that this crime was committed. That's why, for me, I think the police made a mistake in having such a short window.
Well, there's more to the window. There's more to the window. So we have.
Okay.
Let's start off there. Let's go backwards. Let's start off there.
Yeah,
you have 22,000 white Elantras in the area, supposedly. Out of those, how many of those, you know, are registered to men, right? Out of those that are registered to men, how many of those are 6 foot tall or taller with, you know, his athletic build at the time? He's gotten a little bit thicker since, and, you know, bushy eyebrows, curly hair, or they didn't see his hair, but bushy eyebrows. You know, out of those, how many of those were out and about that night? Right. And out of those that were out and about that night, how many of them had their phone off? And out of all them that had their phone off, how many of them had their DNA inside the real killer's car?
I mean, you know, when you put it in those terms, I mean, it seems pretty damning, I will admit.
Yeah.
But I will say this, though, again, my main contention was that the idea that that car is important only became important because that's what they told us. You know what I mean? Like, essentially, I don't care about, like, how he drives around. What I care about is if he's walking up those stairs or walking through that door or walking in the back through that back door. I care about that. So, but again, I think the thing that does bother me is that, I mean, you know, and I would actually ask you this. Everyone says, oh, it's easy to do it in this time window. And I'm like, I don't know. I think that the one mistake for me that I think the police may have made was to have such a short time window that I think it took, if he did it, I think it took longer than that. I don't believe he just came to like a ninja and just like took out all these poor, you know, young people. I think it would take longer time if he did it.
There's a documented attack in, I want to say it's the one that guy attacked everybody with a machete in some Christmas venue where they were selling stuff. I think within a minute and a half, he hit 13 people.
Wow.
A minute and a half.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And those people are alert.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. I think the only other thing too is when that coroner was sitting down there, she said she hadn't seen so much brutality in her career or something like that, right? And I'm like, that means that it wasn't just like slice. It means that one of them really got messed up. At least one of them got really messed up to where she hadn't seen anything like that. Yeah. And so for me, that means that took time, and it also means that there was some personal, like, attachment to that. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I mean, personal.
Because
go ahead, Blue.
Well, she's a small town coroner. She was kind of voted into it,
and she didn't look like she was confident in what she was supposed to say or not say.
I want to say one of the inner city coroners would say, or like the one from SA. But there's some brutal attacks here. There's documented people burning bodies in barbecue pits.
Wow.
And they still identify the bodies here in SA.
Right. But anyway, like I said, I won't take up too much of your time. I'm sure other people want to call in. But one last question. Do we have a quarterback or don't we?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Oh, my God.
I hope so, man. I'm skeptical about KPA, to be honest with you. You know, I think that the Rooneys and Mike Tomlin and the other players on the team have shown a lot of interest in Mason Rudolph. And, you know, I think he'd probably be the best free agent that you're going to get in the market, just because, you know, if you bring in somebody else, you got to pay them as if they're going to start. And if you're going to pay them that much, I think that Mason's going to be small.
Yeah, it sucks for me because, like, you know, Pickett went to my school, so it's like I was really rooting for him. I thought it was cool and everything, you know. But
I'm hoping.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm not against him or anything like that. I hope he can turn it around if he ends up being the guy. But we'll see. It's be a big off season. But I appreciate your call, my man. If you're not in tune to Steel Curtain Network or State of the Steelers, I'm on there as well. Go check it out.
I will definitely check it out because, you know, I mean, like being from Pittsburgh, you know, black and gold is all we're about. So I appreciate it.
100%, my man. You have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. Have a good day.
So that was a good caller, man. That was a good caller. You know, I think that he had some good points, you know, and we have another call coming in. I'm going to answer it, but
I do remember what I was going to say.
What were you going to say, Big Blue?
So I just read a report that I think it was one of the ring cameras, you know, one of the EFOs or whatever, the ones that talk to the media, decided to, I guess, not automatically give criminal footage to the police.
Wait, what?
So if they can be used to identify a criminal, they're not just going to automatically give them to them anymore.
Oh, okay.
That they're going to have to get subpoenas and all this other stuff. And this
is for what? Like ring?
I think the ring.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the right thing to do. I mean, everything is like that. Like if somebody books a hotel or something like that, you know, you can't just go into the hotel and say, hey, we saw somebody walk in here. We want a list of everybody that's on your, you know, in your lobby. You know, give us their names and numbers and we're going to run background checks on everybody. That's not legal. You know what I mean? So I do think that there's, you know, something to that. I'm surprised that that's not something that isn't already a thing. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, without a warrant. It just came out, I think, yesterday or today. I was watching the news.
Yeah. 848, you're on the air. What's going on? Who are we speaking with?
Man, my name is Todd from Jersey.
How's it going, my man?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing good. Just another day in paradise.
Yeah, I hear that. Hey, listen, I was listening to the other caller. I caught the second half of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening earlier when you was doing reading. I forget. I was reading what the person had wrote.
Yeah.
And stuff, and I'm kind of like on the Bryan is innocent train only because like we haven't heard everything yet. So obviously what we have now I can't just, if I'm a juror, I can't put him in jail. But that doesn't mean that he's not guilty.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying that from what we have now, me personally just can't put him in jail because I just have more questions than we have answers. And like the main question I have right now is regarding the PCA. When I was looking over it yesterday, is where it's like they was giving Dylan's statement, and Dylan's statement said that, you know, she peeked her head out once, twice, the third time she seen a man clad in black walking to her. And when I looked at the pictures of the house to the inside, if he's walking towards her and then goes to the sliding door, I mean, he would have to be coming from the direction of Xana and Ethan's room.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's coming that way, then in my opinion, he would see her poking her head out. Because obviously she claims she's seen him to make out his face to see a bushy eyebrows. The only question I have at that point is, why didn't she end up another victim? And thankfully she didn't, but
right.
That's a genuine question I have, is that why didn't she end up another victim? Because if I'm the killer, I put myself in the killer's shoes, and I just killed all them people, and now I potentially have somebody who can ID me, then unfortunately for that person, then they have to go too. Right. You know, isn't that like kind of smart thinking in that sense?
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that if he had found her right before anything else had occurred. So here's what I had heard, and you know, I've spoken with Kaylee's mom, and they also kind of somewhat confirmed what I've heard. That at one point Dylan yelled out like to be quiet or something like that. And if Bryan Kohberger or whoever's committing this crime is in the process of, you know, taking somebody's life in that moment, you know, they're focusing in tunnel vision. If they hear somebody yell, I mean, if I'm playing video games and my wife yells at me, I'm going to miss the first 3-4 words that she said. I'm going to be like, wait, what? You know, I'm not going to understand what she said. So, and she can attest, it's happened multiple times. And, you know, I think that the same thing could be done there. Now, if you look at the positioning of where Dylan's bedroom is, you know, it's right across the opening of the kitchen and right next to the stairway. I think that, and also it's not visible from anywhere where you can park and see the house, right? You can't see that that's the bedroom door. Like you can't see in through the back sliding glass door from anywhere you can park and see that that's a bedroom. I think that especially at night, I think it's possible that he may have thought that was a pantry or a closet and kind of just passed by it the first time, passed by it the second time. And when he heard somebody yell, he may not have known where it was coming from. He hadn't even checked the first floor yet. So I think in his mind, also, he had just came from behind the police department. You know, he had passed by an 700 block of Indian Hills Drive, which is right behind the police department where you can park and see them at 3:26. And I think he was there at 3:28. So he has 2 minutes. You know, if somebody comes from the police department to get to his, you know, get to that house, if they're driving whatever speed he was driving, if they're driving, you know, a little bit faster, you're probably looking at a minute and a half. So I think in that moment, when he heard somebody, he made the decision to get out of there. And, you know, he had a mask on, you know, he had dark clothes on. The only thing that she was able to see was his eyes and eyebrows. So it's not really like a you know, height and weight kind of. So it's not really the greatest description. You can't convict him off of it. You can't exclude him either. You can't say it wasn't him. You know, you can't, you know, Dylan said that the guy was 5'5" and 330 pounds. And obviously it's not him. So that's where that kind of falls in.
And I understand that. I mean, the description, I feel like can be as well be debated in court. I mean, it all depends on her mindset at that night. I mean, obviously, if it's proven that she had something to drink or been drinking or intoxicated in some type of way, then that description can be questioned, because who knows? At that point, if you're intoxicated, you could be seeing double. You don't know what you're seeing at that point, depending on how much she had.
Yeah, that's so.
We you know, we have to wait till trial if she takes the stand or whatnot to even see where that goes. My second thing with that whole night is that I always questioned it because the PCA for me is good, but then it's also kind of vague in a sense where it doesn't really give me everything I want. Like I wanted to know everybody whereabouts that night. I wanted to know like where Dylan was. They never gave us where Dylan was. Bethany whereabouts. I'm assuming that she was at the party with Ethan and Xana. I mean, because that's what they claim or that's what they say. And then it's just I always had a theory about, because I remember in the beginning they were saying that Xana and Ethan's time was unaccounted for. They were like 5 hours or something was missing, and I remember her dad actually said that he spoke to her and Xana claimed she was home with Ethan. So I don't know how true that is. I mean, that's what the dad said, but it's I always had a theory where it's like, I don't know, I want to know what you feel about it. Like, is it a possibility that Xana and Ethan could have been unalived or harmed before Kaylee and Maddie got home?
I mean, I don't think so, because Maddie and Kaylee got home and Xana was on her phone up until 4 something in the morning. So I can assume that based on the downloads of their phone, that there's probably they're probably going to tell that there was some sort of interaction there or not. You know, I really do think that this crime happened, you know, between the hours that they said. You know, you have a white Elantra or a white vehicle, regardless of who's driving that vehicle or not. There's a white vehicle that is driving around very suspiciously. At 4 o'clock, a DoorDash order is dropped off. Now, after that DoorDash order is dropped off is when the vehicle starts to act erratic. So I can assume that basically I'm making the assumption that because of the way the street was named, so it was facing Queen Road, but it was named King Road. That's probably confusing to the DoorDashers. So she probably left a light on to identify which house was the one with that ordered the food. My assumption is once that food had arrived, that indicator was turned off, which is at 4 o'clock, which is at 4:05 when the white vehicle pulls in. It then at that point starts to do this weird turnaround, right? And then it comes back, and then it fails to park and then do another turnaround in front of the house. So whoever is driving that vehicle is already making mistakes. They're already, you can tell that the nerves are getting to them. You can tell that this situation has just gotten real. They then go do a 3-point turn, go all the way back around the apartment complex and park behind it. And so, you know, to me, I think that...
Now,
go ahead.
No, my bad to cut you off. Now, with that, though, I'm glad you brought that up, because my next question was, we never got what kind of car the DoorDash driver was driving.
I mean, we didn't.
I used to drive, huh?
I mean, we didn't, but that doesn't mean that the cops don't know.
Well, yeah, that doesn't mean. I mean, obviously, I feel like they know, but well, I hope they would know, but the public doesn't know. And what I'm getting at is that I used to drive for DoorDash. Now, the description of the car that they were saying, everything that the car was doing, that sounded like something a driver who was lost would do. Turn around, attempted to park in front of the house. Maybe the house lights wasn't on. We don't know. We can assume they was. We can assume they wasn't.
Yeah.
If I don't know where I'm going, that king and queen is so confusing. And then isn't that block like a one way? So you have to turn. If you miss your destination, you got to go up, then come back around. It seemed like, in my opinion, that seemed like an action the DoorDash driver would do, because it seemed like the DoorDash driver and allegedly the killer kind of got there around the same time. And it's kind of crazy that they didn't run into each other. So as far as we know, they didn't. But it's the way they describe it in the PCA. If I'm reading it for the first time, you would have thought that the killer and the DoorDash driver was the same person because of the timing. Obviously, we know they wasn't, but you know what I'm saying? If you didn't know nothing about this case, that would be your first thought.
Right. I don't see that being something that, you know, would be looked into. But we do know that the DoorDasher has came forward and identified who they were. and probably identified which vehicle was theirs. And if that ended up being like a black Chevy Cruze or something like that, then the white Elantra looks even more suspicious. And we also know that where that Linda Lane camera is that is capturing all this movement is about 105 yards away from the victim's house. So it's like a block away. I understand being kind of confused in the vicinity, but being off by 100 by a football field is the other thing that kind of puzzles me on that one. But I appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much for jumping on. We're going to take a couple of more calls. Thank you.
No problem.
Very good, constructive conversation. Thank you.
Be careful out there with that cold weather.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, have a nice one.
You too, my man. Take it easy. So, yeah, the phone lines are going to be back open. We're going to do this probably another 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll be calling.
I got about another 5 minutes. I got to get ready.
Sounds good, Big Blue.
It's raining tonight. Traffic's in the horrible like always.
Oh, yeah, dude. You got to be safe. Yeah, he had a lot of good points and good things to say. When it comes to this case and when it comes to what we know from what Dylan has said or didn't say, we only know a few things, and it's what's ever in the probable cause affidavit, right? We're not privileged to all the information yet. And even when it comes down to trial, we're probably still not going to know everything because not every aspect of the investigation is going to come forth in trial. Like, for instance, if they were to have thought that, and I'm going to make up a name here, that somebody named, Phil Collins, and not the singer, but somebody named Phil Collins was the actual guy, and they went investigated him and come to find out he had nothing to do with it. He had an alibi. He was out of state, and there's nothing to it. We're never going to hear anything about that. We're never going to know about that. It's not going to come out in trial. It doesn't exclude Kohberger. It doesn't prove he's guilty or any of those things. So there's going to be aspects of this investigation that we never know, and especially when it goes and dives into the investigation of others that they may have suspected. So just be advised and be prepared for that, because I know a lot of people are going to go, hey, we heard trial and they didn't bring up Jack Showalter or this person or that person. Why wasn't that in trial? And just so you know, it's not going to be there. All right. 443, you're on the air. What's going on?
Hey, this is Julie from Baltimore.
How's it going?
Let me turn my TV down. It's going well. Hey, I just wanted to make say a couple things about the last caller when he was talking about Dylan and looking out of her bedroom. It never said she poked her head out. It said she looked out her door. And if you ever have a dark room and you have that door, it's ajar just a little bit, you can't see what's in it as you're coming toward it. Cause I've tried.
Yeah.
And she could easily be standing in there and he just walked past her because he had no clue that she was there.
Yeah. That's quite possible. I think that is possible that he didn't see her. I do think that regardless of anything, he was startled and he left because he was startled. That would explain why he didn't go to the first floor.
Yeah. I also think because I had heard too that she had hollered, I think it was when she said she thought that Kaylee was playing with the dog, that she had hollered to, quiet down or something. And I don't think she was playing with the dog. I think that was when they were it was actually happening. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, the whole thing with Xana getting DoorDash, in the PCA, it gives approximate times. It's not like at 4:00 it was approximately this time, which could have been 5 after 4, I'm sure they know because the DoorDash driver would know the actual delivery time. Right. But, the times are all approximate. So, I think Xana and Ethan were collateral damage. I think he may have caught a glimpse of her as he was coming down and he had no choice but to do something.
That's possible. What's up, Big Blue?
I'll say, remember there was that, I think it was in the PCA that somebody said that they heard Xana say they think there's somebody in the house. Maybe they investigated,
So what I think happened, and based on some information that I've also collected from various sources, some a lot closer to the case than you would think. But from what I heard and from what I understand in placing everything together, is that the back sliding glass door was open, and they suspect it was only opened once, and that that the person did this, and they think was in efforts to not leave DNA behind. And if you go back and you close it, then you go back and you open it and you close it again. So if that ended up being the case, that the intruder opened the glass door and left it open, given the temperature that it was that night, I can assume that Xana would have gotten up, walked to the kitchen to see why it was cold, seen the back glass door open, and said, "I think someone's here." And at that point, turn around, walk back to her bedroom. And at that point, whoever the assailant is coming down the stairs, walks up behind her, incapacitates her, then attacks Ethan, and then finishes what he's doing with Xana, and then hears somebody yell, knows it's time to go, gets up, walks towards the exit, changes his clothes, puts his clothes in a bag, gets in the vehicle, and takes off.
Yeah, I agree too about Xana. I think she was the one that said, "I think somebody's in the house."
Yeah. Well, I think that we gotta let's figure out why. Why do you think that maybe Dylan may have thought that it was Kaylee? Was it because it sounded like Kaylee, or was it because she heard a voice? Like, if you look at the layout of the house, Kaylee's bedroom is right above her bedroom. So and our Madison's room is right. Their bedrooms are right above them. So if they were to expect to hear somebody, it'd probably be from one of the two girls that are above them, not from the person that is down the hall, past the living room, down the other hall, past the bathroom, and in that room. And so if a voice came from the kitchen area, I mean, it's possible she may have thought that it was Kaylee's just because of how loud it was.
Yeah, I agree. I had another question too. So I was listening to somebody else earlier today, and I've read this PCA so many times, and all of a sudden the word will jump out at you. And I hadn't seen this until she mentioned it. When it talks about Dylan, it says Dylan stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. So where did she end up? Did she end up eventually down in Bethany? And that's why when the call went out to the police, because maybe she had seen Xana, because the cops said that, they later identified the body that they saw as Xana. They didn't see Ethan from the door, but they saw Xana, from the hallway. Is that why the call that went out said that there was an unconscious individual?
From what I understand,
you know what I'm
saying? No, I understand.
Yeah.
From what I understand, why it came out as an unconscious individual was probably a lot of panic. From what I understand is that Hunter Johnson got a call from one of the girls or both of the girls. I'm not sure, but he had told the Goncalves that he had gotten a call from the girls to go over, and he got there. He went to their rooms, to the second floor, tried to get in. It was blocked, is the term that he had used, and then he was able to push the door open slightly enough to look into it, and he saw the scene. Right. And there was apparently a body that was blocking the door. And so I don't think that Dylan or Bethany, I think if there's a possibility that maybe Dylan went to the first floor in the morning or something like that. But I don't think that Dylan or Bethany ever actually checked the second floor door. And I don't think that they actually checked, the third floor either. I think that they, were in a panic, heard some noises, and with that being said, they, called their friends to go look because they were too scared.
Yeah, I definitely agree they didn't check the third floor. But I just thought when I saw that she originally went to sleep, to me it says, oh, she ended up somewhere else, though. Like maybe after he left, it got quiet and she thought, okay, it's safe to go out now. And maybe she decided to dart down to Bethany to get to the first floor or something, and maybe saw like Xana in the hallway, by the door. I remember hearing that too about Hunter, that they had to push the door, that something was blocking the door. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll find out eventually, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Go
ahead.
No, I was just saying, I appreciate your call. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, people talk like this PCA this is it. This is everything. And it's just what it took to get that arrest warrant.
A bare minimum.
You know, exactly. I'm sure there's so much we don't know. And we won't know until, you know, much later, it sounds like now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you calling in. I'm going to take a handful more calls real quick. And
I appreciate you too.
No problem. You have a good day.
All right, you too.
I'm 954.
Hello?
Yes. Can you, I think I hear myself in the background. If you can mute that for me, please.
Hi.
How's it going?
I've never called into anything, and my daughter's in the other room, so if she finds me doing this, she'll freak out. But I have a couple of points I'd like you to comment on. I've got notes on my phone.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to throw it there to you and hear what you have to say, okay?
Okay.
First of all, from the very beginning, we were told that this is a targeted, isolated attack.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know what was there at the scene that convinced them that it was indeed targeted and isolated. Did they see something? Was something else left? What indication was it, besides the police and the university just wanting to calm the fear in the community? Was there anything legitimate that led them to believe that this house or this person or this group of people were targeted? How did they get there?
Okay, so let's answer that one first. The targeted situation. Let's go back to this. So either the day that the murders happened or the day after, the mayor of Moscow came out saying that this was seemed like a crime of passion. So you have one of the victims of the four who was recently broken up and is moving away, and this is Kaylee and Jack DeCour. Jack DeCour, we know now or later, but the police knew then because he went and talked to them, that he had seen them at the corner club the night of the incident, and they were calling him at 2 or 3 in the morning. And so, and obviously also the Goncalves family said that it appeared, or they alluded that it appeared that Kaylee's injuries were more severe. So that's the bare minimum that they had first day. They didn't have anything else other than that. So right there, you can kind of tell that, hey, you know what? This kind of looks like a targeted attack. It's ex-boyfriend. She's moving. He can't get over it. She was dating another guy not that long ago because, her family said that she had gone on a date and the guy called her, an inappropriate name. He knew about it. So there's all these arrows that are pointing in that direction. And then by the next day, the mayor started walking that back. Now, the police and the mayor had already put it out there that it was a targeted event. And, I think that at the end of the day, it still was a targeted, attack. I don't think that any specific victim was the target. I do think that the house was the target. But, I think that at the end of the day, I think that had a lot to do with why they thought it was a target attack early on, is because that's what the evidence kind of pointed at. But as you do your investigation, as you start looking at things and start talking to people, start forensically downloading cell phones and going through, their messages, their locations, where they were during specific times and camera footage, you can kind of start to clear up where some people are. I know a lot of people were kind of questioning why certain people were cleared right away. And, they could have had a very strong alibi, unlike Bryan. If somebody comes up and, if somebody's saying it was Jack Showalter, right? And Jack Showalter has a video of him driving into Coeur d'Alene at 3:30, and that he's there and you can see him on tape at different places until 4 o'clock, and Coeur d'Alene is an hour away. I mean, are you going to still investigate him? Not as the person that committed the crime. I mean, you might look into him if there's any reason as to if he would have hired somebody, but as the person that went in there and actually committed the crime, no, you cleared him. There's no way he can be in two places at one time. And so, I think that happened quite a bit. I mean, when you have people who didn't commit a crime, it really doesn't usually take very long to clear them. Now, yes, there are some that fall through the cracks, and there's been people that, committed crimes that got away with it and this, that, and a third. But for the most part, and especially in today's day where technology is so advanced, law enforcement is so much more advanced than what they were just 5 years ago. It's less likely that things are going to get wrong.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it turns out within a matter of days, it was not targeted and it was not a crime of passion. Is that what we're saying? Because they cleared everyone so soon?
No, what I'm saying is that the person that they thought was the target and who was doing the target probably got cleared right away within the first couple of
Okay,
weeks.
so they let that go.
Right.
They let go of that. So it's no longer a targeted attack.
Well,
Or is it?
not that was the target. Like there, for me, I think it was the house. And the reason being is, if you look at everything that was going on with Kohberger, and this is assuming that Kohberger committed this crime, he had lost every job he ever had to my knowledge, from what's out there.
Right.
The only time that he ever succeeded, or was not so much succeeded, but the time that he was praised was the time when there was online classes, but at the same time, he was being forced to resign as a security guard. Right. So
Right.
he had all these things going bad around him. He was losing his job
Right.
as a TA. He was not going to pass a background check. There's just no way he's passing a background check based on him, his behavior and the actions that he had at WSU, and being forced to resign as a security guard. There's just no way. It was never
Right.
going to happen.
Right.
He was going to have to show several years of good behavior before he'd ever be considered a good candidate. And so he knew those things. During that same time, one of his friends come out on this show talking about during the Thanksgiving break how they would text with each other. And this was one of his friends that used to, do heroin with him. And,
Right.
he tells him that, I've changed my life around. I'm in criminology and I want to be a part and solve, high profile crimes, and if he's not going to pass a background check and he can't be in these whole high profile crimes, and there's only two other roles that you can be. And in my opinion, when you look at whoever committed this crime, if you take out, Bryan Kohberger out of it, whoever went in there, didn't leave their DNA behind, completely, took 4 people out in the silence of the night and left 2 people alive that don't even know what happened. And you just take Kohberger out of it, like somebody committed that crime. Somebody did it. And I had a point to that. I'm kind of missing it. I'm losing it. Sorry about that.
I understand. No, you have really good points. I understand. So it was an opportunity for him to act out his, wildest dream, and
Right.
he was motivated to do it because his life was going to hell.
Well,
I get it.
and he wanted to, create the high profile crime. And if you're going to create a high profile crime, what are some things that have to happen? Right. You probably need, when you look at the high profile crimes in the past, the Gabby Petitos and majority
Right.
of them, they're young, attractive victims. And then you look at some of the other cases, there's multiple victims. So if you had young, attractive, multiple victims, that's going to equate to a bigger crime. Right. And so I personally think that he just went out one night, drove around, looked for the house with the largest party that were occupied by females, and decided that was the house that he was going to commit his crime to. And which is why, like, a new vehicle such as Kaylee's vehicle really doesn't matter, because his goal is mass casualty. He wants to go in there, take them out as stealthily as possible and as many as possible, so that way this crime can be as big as possible. So a new car out there like Kaylee's or Ethan's car out there wouldn't have bothered him as much as if somebody else would. And now I remember where I was going with, somebody committed the perfect crime that comes with planning, that comes with, being prepared. And seeing that vehicle and seeing that other vehicle kind of throws a wrench into that preparation, regardless of who committed the crime. So them being there has to be an aspect of the crime. And if them being there is an aspect of the crime, it's either they were the target or it was about mass casualty, and it didn't matter who the target was.
Right. But if you're this criminal mastermind who's book smart, why, and you meticulously plan this to pull off what he pulled off, why didn't he start with establishing an alibi then?
I don't think he ever thought he was going to get caught. I mean,
Why
if he didn't leave the knife sheath, if he doesn't leave the knife sheath, he doesn't.
Yeah, he's not caught.
He's not caught. And I think his alibi, and he even said it, he said, check my phone. and its locations. And I guess he assumed because his phone was off, or because his phone wasn't connected to the towers, because he either had it off or on airplane mode or whatever the case may have been, that was somehow going to, exonerate him. In fact,
but he knows better. He knows about GPS. He knows about casts and pings and everything. So he had to have known better.
Right, which is why he turned it off. He turned off his phone. And like I said, if the knife sheath isn't found, and he doesn't leave it behind, somebody committed the perfect murder, and they went in there and they committed the perfect crime. And,
right.
I think that even the most perfect crime comes with mistakes. And had he not left the knife sheath, it would have been it probably would have been longer for them to find him. I still think they would have found him. I think that his behavior at WSU was disturbing enough that somebody was eventually going to call the police department and say, hey, this guy's acting a certain way, and he drives a white Elantra. And then the police department say, all right, what's this guy's name? Bryan Kohberger. And they start looking at his phone, and they look at the connections to the tower and find out that his phone turned off and it wasn't on. And then, the storm starts going, that they already got on him. So it's just a matter of time. Him leaving the sheath behind just expedited that time frame, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. This is a little bit random, but what would you say if he was a rapper, he had a rap song, and his rap name was K-Bar?
Oh, that would be crazy. That would be crazy.
Right?
That would be
and
crazy.
His nickname is Kohberger.
Kohberger. It could be. I mean, and I'm glad you brought up the K-Bar thing too, because he's missing his. Apparently he purchased one in April of 2022, and it's nowhere to be found. I mean, that's another thing to add on to the circumstantial stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so,
what about the rap songs, like the lyrics are called bars? So his rap name was K-Bar because his nickname was Kohberger.
Yeah.
I don't know, just really random. What do you think about the fact that people in Pennsylvania routinely, and actually it's an ordinance, that they separate their trash from their recyclables, and they put things in bear bags, as in grizzly bear? It's an ordinance because bears come and eat up their trash and then start going in homes, and people are in danger. This is commonplace.
Right.
So he indeed may have been separating trash, but it wasn't to hide his DNA. It was because they're required to do that for recycling and to put various, I don't know what the stipulations are, in what's called Ziploc. They're called bear bags. They're Ziploc bags. So he was separating trash, not to hide his DNA, but because that's what they do there.
I mean, maybe. I will say that you're probably right about the bears and putting things in bear bags. But the thing wasn't that he was separating, the stuff that, food and things like that bears would be attracted to. It was his specific trash from everybody else's. And he was putting his specific trash into into plastic baggies.
Did they then turn around and test his trash that he was separating into exclusively his Ziploc baggies, that it was indeed all of his DNA on that trash?
I don't know. All I know is that when they pulled
how
out,
did they know he was separating his trash?
Well, I'm assuming that they probably did do some sort of test to determine that there was DNA on that trash. And then when they tested the other trash, which they had when they pulled in all of the trash, and they found no DNA of his in that trash, then, one can deduce that he took out his trash. And that's why it's all of his DNA trash is in this baggie and none of his DNA trash, regardless of what it was, whether it was food, plastic, a paper, whatever, none of that ended up in his regular trash. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, and it's possible, I guess, to a certain extent,
right?
But I think that there's a little bit more variables that go into it, which make it a little bit suspicious, regardless.
But it might not be as evident as people have taken it to be. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think I take more.
Yeah.
I think I would take more about him dropping off his trash.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think I'd hold more weight in him dropping off his trash at the neighbor's house as suspicious than the baggies, like you're mentioning. I mean, it is weird. It's suspicious, but it doesn't mean he killed anyone.
Well, how about, and I don't know why I'm stuck on the trash, but how about if he didn't do it according to the ordinances and separate it, but he didn't want to get in trouble, so he puts it in his neighbors so that they get in trouble, not him, for not separating it or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I just think that,
I know.
you know, at the end of the day, they couldn't find his trash at his dad's house while he had been there for, let's see, that was the 27th. He got there about the 17th, so about 10 days. He'd been there for 10 days, and yet there was nothing in the trash that was his, that had his DNA on it. So it does seem like at the end of the day that he was, you know, making steps that if somebody were to have gone into his trash, that they wouldn't find his DNA. And
possible.
I'm not sure who's taking those steps. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, possible. Yeah. Why do you think they didn't interview BK like they do other suspects instead of like the massive SWAT operation in the middle of the night?
Probably because of the nature of the crime and the amount of evidence that they have against him. You know, when you have somebody that is a quadruple homicide suspect, you know, you want to get them off the street as fast as possible. You know, the possibility of them committing a similar crime is pretty high. And so you're going to try to get him off as soon as possible off the street. And they did try to interview him. From what I understand, he asked a few questions and then lawyered up. Not really anything crazy. I think that's where, he was asking about his parents and where they were and stuff like that. And, you know, I think that's where the whole, did somebody else get arrested? I don't think it has anything to do with the crime. I think it has to do with, you know, he drove cross country with his dad and he wanted to make sure his dad didn't get arrested for some sort of accomplice type of thing. So I don't see that statement that he made as a sign of suspicion or guilt, to be honest with you.
Right. You know, it is such a heinous crime. And everybody, no matter who they think did or didn't do it, we all want answers and we all want some justice. And the gag order is just not going to allow that. We all want to know what really went on, and I don't know that we are. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know that we are.
Not until probably the summer of 2025 are we going to finally figure out what's going to happen or what's happening here. You know, like I said, for those that say that they don't want to, you know, say he's guilty because they believe in innocence until proven guilty and stuff like that. I don't hold anything against those. It's kind of like, you know, when I hear the, you know, ISP framed him for some reason, like that's when I'm starting to be like, come on now.
You couldn't possibly coordinate all of those agencies and all of that personnel to be able to pull it off, number one, and then maintain it. People just aren't that good. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's not going to happen. It's almost impossible. And so, like, you know,
and the other thing people need to understand, all of us, is that this isn't a 1-hour TV crime drama. Where in between commercials, we can go from the beginning to the end of the case, and it all lines up on a few little points without context even. You know, this is real life. Right. There were 4 of them with individual lives. It was messy, and I just mean complicated. And, you know, while the evidence that they've shared surely can point to, you know, this being what happened, there's so much life in between there that's not mentioned, that it's just as possible this isn't the way it lined up. You know what I mean? Not like a TV crime show.
No, I get it. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that is something that is, you know, gets taken out of context sometimes because there is the TV shows, the movies, and the CSIs and things like that. And so, for sure. But I want to thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to answer a couple of questions on here, and then I'm going to go back and answer one more phone call here in a minute.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye. A great caller. And so I wanted to pull up something real quick that I saw. It says here, ISP framed Dr. Moore, and this person laughed like that's funny. I'm not sure, you know, if Dr. Moore did get framed. That I don't think that's funny. But regardless, I don't know if that's true or not, but let's just say it is. Does that mean that every case in Idaho somehow now can't be solved because somebody in ISP framed somebody at one point? I get the argument that, there are corrupt officers or this or that, and that you may find a corrupt officer within a certain department. But where's the involvement? Did this ISP officer that framed Dr. Moore, did they collect the knife sheath? Probably not. Did they talk to Jack DeCore and, all of the other witnesses and victims? Probably not. That was Moscow PD's detective and FBI. Did ISP do the, the triangulations on his phone? No, that was the FBI. So, everything, like nothing came from ISP. So, I mean, it'd be one thing if you said that, hey, ISP framed Dr. Moore and that same ISP officer is the same one that is investigating this case. Right? Because if that's not the case, so then what you're saying is if you have a corrupt cop at one point, at any time in one state, that every case throughout that entire state cannot be tried because of this one cop somewhere in that one state. It doesn't make any sense, man. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. I'm gonna take these and then I'll open up the phone lines again. Let me just answer a few of these. It says, Elaine, hold on, I'll answer this one. Give me a sec. Give me 1 sec. You're on the air, but give me 1 sec. Elaine Love from Love Spain came in with a $6 super chat saying, also if you can turn down the TV in the background. It says, hi from Spain. You guys are awesome and the only channel that talks sense when it comes to this case. I appreciate that, Elaine. Glad my beard grew back. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you call from abroad? I think you can. It shows up as a local number in Texas, but it's actually a Skype number. So I'm pretty sure you can. And Jim Wheatley joins the crew. Thank you so much. How close was he by these pings and exactly when does this accurate FBI thingy state? So as far as the pings, it really doesn't matter, to be honest with you. They have his GPS locations. So those GPS locations are going to put him down to a couple of feet wherever he was at. So the 27-mile radius, this, that, and a third, that was just to get the warrants. Once they got the warrants, then they can accurately put down, how far he was. Or where he was exactly. It says, I think people can question before making up their mind, and we don't have enough right now. You 100%. Jeff H says, with $5 super chat, I'm trying to find a good pick of the lock mechanism or claw in a sliding glass door. If it points downward, you can just lift the door and you're in. The fact that they, from what I understand, it sounds like it was left unlocked. Now we have 918 on the line. How's it going, 918?
It's going good. My name is Leanne Lurkin.
Nice to meet you, Leanne.
Anyway, thank you. I've never called in anywhere either. But I was curious about BK was so in a hurry to get back to Moscow so he could exonerate himself. And we haven't heard anything about that, really. All we've heard them really doing is trying to pick apart the way the police ran things. And, I mean, as far as the defense.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, we don't know much about a lot of the case and stuff like that. And I think that can you run that last part about me again one more time? I just want to make sure I caught you right.
Well, I was saying that he was so eager he couldn't wait to get to to be exonerated in Moscow. But we haven't heard the defense mention anything. You would think if he had an alibi or something that could exonerate him, he would have told it day one and been out. I wouldn't want to stay in jail. But now they just seem like they're nitpicking at everything the police do. They're trying to find anything, little thing they can get, make it get thrown out or mistrial.
Right.
So I just was confused about all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that from what I understand, so if the police there in Pennsylvania, they had a press conference, and I think that they're ones that said that he seemed very eager to get back to Moscow so he can see what they had on him. He didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was, it really wasn't so much to exonerate him. Because if you listen to what the, his defense team says, that they're hoping to find something that exonerates him through testimony of the witnesses. And so when you have him stalling for as long as he is, what ends up happening is that memory is a tricky thing and things like that. So he's probably hoping that somebody says something different or recalls something different years later, right? After the fact, and then he can come in and say, "Oh, that's what exonerates me right there." And so that's why this is taking so long, and why it's being dragged out for so long. It's it's a tactic by the defense. It's not the first time that this tactic has been used,
Right.
But it's obviously not a tactic that's used by many people that are innocent.
Exactly. Oh, one other question I have been wanting to ask for a long time. I can't remember if I emailed it, but could Dylan have been, she's the one that saw stuff and got scared. Could she have been laying in like her room and just trying to rationalize, what did I just see? Some man, and trying to rationalize, and then fell asleep? All those kids had to be tired. They had a party the night before. They had a football game that day. They had partied all night, and then they all went home. So, I just feel bad for Dylan and Bethany. I know, please people don't come at me. That's just my opinion. I don't think they had anything to do with it. But I'm thinking about when I was their age and how if I was scared, I would just probably put the covers over my head, have my door locked, and be thinking, oh, what should I do? What should I do? Do I call the police, or is it my imagination? Especially if there'd been a little drinking going on that night. It probably worn off by the time they went to bed, but I'm sure they were exhausted.
Yeah.
They had a big weekend.
Yeah. We can assume that they may have been drinking. You're also looking at somebody who was, I think, 19 at the time, maybe 20. One of them was 19. I don't know if it was her or Bethany, but one of them was like 19, fixing to turn 20. This is probably the first time, that she's out of her parents' house, outside of daddy's house, outside of the city that they grew up in. And, she hasn't been there long. This school just started. So, there's a lot of variables and pieces of context that need to go into play. But,
well, that's just one theory I thought maybe people might ought to look at instead of always trying to blame Bethany and Dylan. I just feel bad for those girls that they're going to have to live with that the rest of their lives, living through, probably survivor's guilt. But
yeah, 100%.
Anyway, thanks a lot for taking my call.
Thank you. I appreciate you. You have a good one. And that's going to do it for the calls here, guys. We're going to I'm going to answer some questions here in the live chat real quick and some comments. Somebody said, that's not correct. They still have nothing. What got them to BK? Read the documents and listen to her speaking to the judge. Her speaking to the judge and saying that she doesn't know how they got there doesn't mean that the prosecution doesn't know how they got there, or that the state doesn't know how they got there, or law enforcement does. And, how they got to BK, it's pretty obvious. They went through the IGG that got them the name. Now, you can't arrest somebody based on the IGG. Like, you can't go get a warrant. You can't even use it. That's like somebody taking a lie detector test and failing the lie detector test, right? You can't use that. So it's just a tip. So at that point, you have a name. Now you have to build a case. It's like any other case that comes in by any other means of tip. You can't just, like, if somebody were to come in and tell me that, hey, this guy over here is committing a crime, or he committed a crime and the evidence is in his house. I can't even take that to a judge to get a search warrant. Like, that doesn't mean anything. I'd have to go and investigate the dude, watch the dude, and depending on the crime, if it's like some sort of drug crime and he's a drug dealer, you're going to find evidence of him dealing drugs. There's going to be people driving by. at all hours of night, real quick stops. Then what do? You pull one of them over. You find the drugs. You get them to dime out the guy because they're scared of going to prison. You do that a couple of times and you build enough to get a warrant for the inside of the house. Get the warrant for the inside of the house, you find the drugs, you arrest this guy. And then when you go to trial, you never even bring up the guy that gave you the tip, because you know what? That guy may have never even used his real name or is refusing to testify. But it doesn't matter because you don't need it. You have your investigation. You saw these people leaving and going. You pulled them over legally and you found the drugs and you're pulling it back to him. It's the same thing here. They have his name. That doesn't mean they can go do anything with it. They have to put him and pin him to the crime. They have to find evidence for that. So, and the evidence that they found was, once they got his name, was, all right, we have a warrant for all the phones that are connected to the tower closest to the victim's house, right? Well, let's just expand that reach from 1/3 of a mile to 10 miles. And let's expand it, from 3 or 2:45 or 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And you'll see that his phone disconnects from the network at 2:40 something, and it reconnects at 4:48, I think. And so you have a 2-hour window where it didn't connect. That's interesting. That's enough to get a warrant for his actual, coordinates and his phone locations and to download his phone forensically. Like, you don't need a lot, like you guys think, to get a warrant like that. And then once you get that warrant, that's just another small piece. So then you can go and get another warrant for his, his arrest or his DNA, or in this instance, they tried to go get his DNA, right? He wasn't at his house. He was already in the Poconos. So they go pull the trash at his dad's house. He's separating his trash and throwing it into people's bins. So his DNA is not coming out there. But they found the dad's DNA, and they were able to compare that to the DNA on the sheet and come out that the person who left the DNA on the sheet, that Bryan Kohberger's dad, was also that person's father. And, so far, from what I understand, Bryan Kohberger is the only son of Michael Kohberger, his father. And they used that to get a warrant to test his, they arrested him with that. And once they got him in custody, they used that familial DNA from the trash pool to test his DNA to the sheath, compared directly. And that's where they came up with his name. Or that's where they came up with that it was 100%, it was his DNA on the sheath. So it's not very hard to see how they got there. If Ann Taylor really can't see it and she really doesn't know, then I think Bryan Kohberger got the wrong attorney. His PA attorney said BK was very calm, intelligent, and wanted to be exonerated. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people who say that they're innocent that are in jail for something that they did do. Now, do some people get through the cracks? Yeah. But when it comes to Bryan Kohberger, like I mentioned before, how many Elantras out there are there? Out of those Elantras that are out there, how many are registered to males about 6 foot tall or taller, bushy eyebrows? Out of those males, how many of them were driving around that night? Out of those that were driving around that night, how many of them had only one front license plate? Out of those that were driving around with one front license plate with a male that was 6 foot taller or taller, how many of those had, Bryan Kohberger's DNA inside the car on the sheath? It's called deduction, guys. You deduce things. It just makes it pretty hard and damning that it's not him. Comparing Ann Taylor to Richard Allen's defense attorney's point of fact blew the gag order, names suspects, and cops who don't think Ari is guilty. That's how you petition the court. I agree. There is a difference between how this case is being operated and Richard Allen's case. And in Richard Allen's case, he has at least 3 lawyers that have come forward and saying that he is 100% innocent. I don't know if he's 100% innocent or not. I do think that there's a lot in that case that, needs to be looked into. Elvis Fields is one guy that I think that is very suspicious, but you also have all the, Odinism stuff and things like that. To me, I think that case on its own is more likely, and I don't think that it's a high percentage but it's a higher percentage of him not have done the crime than Bryan Kohberger by miles, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Thank you. Let's see. I'm gonna answer a few more of these. This is true. Grunge says, Ann Taylor says she cannot see how they got to him. She also says she has not gone through all the evidence. Yeah. AT said the state told her where to find the evidence and she's still looking for, and she will, but needs more time. Yeah, that's exactly. She said that they told her where to find it, and she goes, and they may very well been right and true. I just haven't gone and looked. That's exactly what she said. She also said that they have so much evidence and so many witnesses and so much evidence against Bryan Kohberger, it's going to take them over a year to go through it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a weak case when you have that many witnesses and that much evidence. Now, granted, the witnesses probably aren't all witnesses that saw him commit the crime. Probably very few of them that are going to attribute to that. But there's still 51 terabytes worth of evidence that's not witnesses. Usually when there's that much evidence, it doesn't usually equate to little or no evidence. It doesn't usually equate to or mean or equal out to a weak case. Usually the more evidence there is, the stronger the case is. It's just what I think, at least. Let's see. What's up? The Real Macro K is here. Been here for 2 months. Thank you. Sound like DM and BF didn't do anything. Let's see. Let's see. In order to be exonerated, the defender must first be convicted and then sentenced. Later on, evidence comes to light to overturn the verdict. Correct term. Exculpate. Yeah, I mean, you got me on that one. I can't even pronounce the last word. But as far as like exoneration and not, and it's interesting that he did say that, and I think that one of the legal terms is that he had to be found guilty first. And here's the other thing, guys. I want you to really think about this. Ann Taylor said when it came to their alibi that they were in the same place as they were before. And during the prior court hearing, she had said that, they only know what he's told them, and that's what he's told them. They can't go further than what they know. And that was kind of a dig at what Bill Thompson said about what the FBI was willing or unwilling to give up, right? But I think it's true. And here's the thing. If you tell your lawyers what you were doing, or honest with it, or you tell them that you committed the crime, most likely they're going to not be your lawyers anymore. There is a code of morals that you have to go through when you're an attorney. And if he would have been honest with her, then she can't say, things that aren't true. That's perjury, right? So if he's being directly vague about what he was doing that night with his own lawyers, why would that be? Like, it doesn't make any sense why he would be purposefully vague unless he was trying to not disclose what he was really doing, because it would affect his representation. So everything that Ann Taylor has said, their golden goose egg is the IGG. That's like saying that, my golden goose egg as a defense attorney for my client is a lie detector test that my client failed that isn't being used against him as evidence. And I think that somehow, some way, I'm going to get that entered into evidence and throw out the entire case based off of that. Doesn't make any sense, dude. Doesn't make any sense. Bethany and Dylan are suspect, but not BK, whose DNA was under the victim and driving around at night during the crime. Yeah, and that's true. Oh man, just me. I didn't know you were calling. I apologize. It doesn't say names. I would have loved to have answered your call and speak to you. I get so many at the same time. Let's see. But shouldn't the defense have everything the prosecution has that shows BK's guilt? Yes, they should. And they do. What they're asking for isn't the stuff that shows BK's guilt. The IgG doesn't show that BK is guilty. The IgG doesn't say that Bryan Kohberger's DNA is matched perfectly to the DNA on the sheath. It's not like that. It says that that's more than likely the person, but that's not evidence against him. And so evidence against him is what he gets, and evidence that would exonerate him is what he would get. Like, if they went and spoke to somebody random, right, and that person said, hey, I wasn't there, I was out of town, and produces a plane ticket and a hotel room and a hotel ticket and surveillance that's where they were. How does that say that it wasn't Bryan Kohberger if that's the case? It doesn't exclude him. It doesn't exonerate him. It doesn't say it was that it was him either. It doesn't say that because this guy was out of town or whatever that Bryan Kohberger committed the crime. So that evidence probably wouldn't even go to the defense or even see the light of court. So what the prosecution gives to the defense is the evidence that they plan on using against him, and if there's some evidence out there that exonerates him. The rest of it is just fat that needs to be cut off. My God, this trial can start soon enough. Thank you, Daniel, for always bringing critical thinking to this case. Thank you so much, the real Kimmy. I wrote Micro K. I don't know why I called you Kimmy. Oh, man, here you go. I'm going to start naming names already. I'm calling people the wrong names. But thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your $5 super chat. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Don't forget to hit that like. Yes, please. Please. At this point, BK could confess to everything he's accused of, and some people would think he was lying. I agree with that. I mean, I don't know anything as far as the Chris Watts case goes. I didn't cover it. I know that he pled guilt, or he confessed and pled guilty to committing his crimes against his pregnant wife and 2 children. And some people still, from what I understand, think that he's innocent based, even though he's confessed to it. Now, I don't know anything about that case. I don't know what the evidence is or isn't. I think it was in Colorado is where that place happened, or that crime happened. It was before me getting into true crime and things like that. But I do know that case is one that a lot of people think that he was lying when he said he'd committed the crime. Let's see, go through a few of these before we call it a show. There is a 16-minute gap in the timeline from when he drives out of Moscow until where his phone finally pings. Was he stashing the knife in clothes? I strongly suspect that's what he was doing. He probably parked somewhere, got out, let out whatever it was that he was holding inside the house, probably screamed out loud, yelled, jumped, did all these things that he was holding in during the crime. He's probably doing that, in the car ride there, screaming and things like that. Probably gets there, does that. If this was some sort of sexually motivated crime, probably relieved himself there because there was no, DNA or evidence of that at the crime scene. Probably dug a hole and did hide some things. And then, take off. He went back the next day. PCA says that he was out in that area where he was with his phone off for several hours the next day. So I assume that he probably went somewhere, dropped the items off in case he got pulled over somewhere, on his trip back to Blaine or back to Pullman in the route that he took. That way he's not, as suspicious. If you pull up somebody and you got bloody clothes and stuff with you, it's pretty suspicious, right? So goes and puts that somewhere else, goes back for it the next day. So let's see. Yep, here it is. The defense seems to not have anything to dismiss the evidence, only trying to find loopholes, which isn't working. I agree. I need locked up so I can have some control over my life. Jeff comes in and says, you should make a YouTube short of the explanation you just gave of the IgG being a tip. Very clear and sufficient. I don't even know what that last word was, but I think it said, I think he meant sufficient, but I could be wrong. But if it's a weird word, sorry, Jeff. My vocabulary is, but yeah, you know what? You're probably right. I should do something about that a little short. In fact, I'll probably cut this one out and put it out there. I also want to put out there, you know, the car, right? Everybody looks at it being 22,000 cars. And I want to put out a little short saying, yeah, well, out of those 22,000 cars, how many of those are registered to men over 6 foot tall with bushy eyebrows? Those men that were driving around late at night, out of those men that were driving around late at night that are that tall, without a front license plate, out of those without the front license plate driving out, that have Kohberger's DNA in the car. Probably put those two together. Thank you so much. Got booted out again. Who booted you out? What are you talking about? You can't be exonerated without being convicted of a crime first. Freudian slip. Yeah, that's possible. That is possible. I think that the fact that the attorney said that they're going to be, what do you call it? The fact that the attorney said that they're going to be doing this case or fighting this case for the next 28 years kind of tells me that he thinks that his client's probably going to get convicted as well. This was I don't know what his name is, the attorney that's alongside Ann Taylor. Art Reese comes in with one eye. Thank you. Great show. Thank you, DTS, for critical thinking. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of scan through these. Thank you, Daisy 73. What kind of evidence is all not indexed? The tips. I mean, the photos, what they're claiming is that the photos aren't there and other things. But here's the thing. I talked to, and we had an attorney on our show who's been a defense attorney. We had him on the show a couple of times. And when it comes to the evidence, he even said it. There's a good possibility that, the defense attorney got a box full of things, nothing pointing one way or another. And it's up to you as the lawyer to figure that out. They're not going to hand you the playbook of how they're going to, try your client. Like, that's not how it works. And so, them not getting indexed or told or handheld through the evidence doesn't surprise me. AT was very calculated when making that statement in court, in my opinion. Which statement? The 400 witnesses against her client, the ample amount of evidence against her client that they need time to go through. What other? I do know that she said that they're waiting on a crucial piece of video surveillance. And what I think it is, and again, this is my opinion, is there's probably some footage there that shows a vehicle traveling or the white Elantra. I'm assuming it's the white Elantra. And this is going to be my psychic thing. Let's see how accurate I get. My assumption is that it's probably a footage of the white Elantra off of a security camera. And they only got like an hour of that footage of the footage that they're using against Kohberger, and what they probably want are 12 hours before or after or something. And so they're getting all that information to her. It's not going to be used against her. It's not part, or him. It's not part of the crime or exonerates him. So yeah, it is what it is, but that's what they're asking for. What came first, the car or the IGG? The IGG. I mean, by policy that the state put out there, the IGG came out first. They can still be your lawyer. They can't say you're. Yeah, I know that. But he's not. He's saying that that's what I said. You can't put him up there. You can't lie. You can't say he's innocent. You can't say that, somebody else committed this crime. All right. You can't say any of those things if he goes out there and says that he committed the crime. Now, if he's, purposefully vague, and then the attorney can, defend him from everything and everything. Do you think Kohberger admitted to AT that he did the crimes and she's just fighting just to do her job? No, I don't think he admitted to doing the crimes. I think that he's been purposefully vague, just like she said. She said that, it took them to the last minute for Kohberger to tell her that he drives around late at night. And that was way back when they needed the alibi. And since then, until his last hearing, she said that hasn't changed. So he has not gone into detail He hasn't said anything about where exactly he went. And if he's not willing to tell his lawyer that, I wonder why. Let's see. Either he did it or he didn't, and everyone involved in the trial should have access to the evidence and make up their own minds. Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to happen. They do have everything the prosecution has. AT said that at the last hearing. She said that they have so much they haven't gone through, and that there was some stuff that they were waiting on, but the stuff that they're waiting on or the stuff that they've asked for in discovery have been things like the IgG, which ain't being used against them, and stuff like that, and names of those in the IgG. So it is what it is. It's okay, Daniel. We understand. You mean well, and we want to talk all about us, but so many chatting and calling, and only you. Yeah. Today it was only me. Big Blue is going to be going to school here in the next not so distant future, so he's probably going to be on less and less. And Hyman's having a schedule conflict as well, and so it might just be me, a lot of it, me and Big Blue from here forward. Just kind of heads up on that. Let's see. All right, so if Kohberger was found to be indigent based on the Idaho Constitution and 6A right to counsel, since she's one of the only DP qualified attorneys in Idaho, how could she drop it? I don't think she's the only one that's DP qualified in the entire state of Idaho. I think she's just probably like the closest one. Transparency says hysterical. I mean, some of the things that I've heard have been hysterical. You're right. Let's see. Probably not recommended to go. I don't know anything about it. I honestly don't. I know nothing about it. Hey, what's going on, Steve? What's up to True Crime Web? What's going on? We got to get you back on, man, so we can kind of talk about the process that goes on when it comes to, CSI getting and recovering evidence. What type of packaging does it go into? Where does it get sent to? What does the lab do once it gets there? How is it secured? Things like that. We got to get you back on, my man. Let's see. Because he's so smart that he's dumb. The thing is, there's a difference between being smart and being perfect, right? You can be very smart. You can have everything planned out, and you can be trained, do everything you can to train yourself. But, especially if this was his first time, mistakes are bound to happen, especially your first time. And you can tell the way he was driving after 4 o'clock that, he was getting a little nervous and mistakes were already starting to be made. So, you look at a guy like BTK, who had committed several home invasions and murders. And at one point, more experienced than what Bryan Kohberger is, also in law enforcement. He left his gun behind. A big part of the, of his kit that he used to control, manipulate his victims, he left that behind. So just because somebody's smart doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes. Yeah, I like to think that I'm smart, and I've made myself a shit ton of mistakes. Excuse my language, but it's true. Let's see. You think BK figured get away with the crime? Great. Get caught. Catherine Ramsland writes a book. Yeah. It's probably there. That's probably what's it. I don't know. But I'm caught up now. I want to say thank you guys for joining in. Thank you, everybody that donated, everybody that is stuck in, everybody that subscribed. Whether you think Kohberger is guilty or you think he's innocent or you want to wait until trial comes, nothing wrong with that. And you have your right to of your opinion. And, just don't belittle anybody else. I try not to do that myself. I know sometimes I catch myself being a little too forward, but for the most part, it's just, we all want the same thing, right? We all want justice in this case. And here, I like to think that we're going to put some critical thinking and logic into everything and try to come up with a reasonable answer. But I appreciate everybody, and Pumpkin saying still reasonable doubt. Yeah, I mean, we don't know everything. Today, based on the information that I have, if I was a juror, I'd probably say he is guilty. But I would need more to be. I wouldn't be surprised if more people on the jury needed more information based on what we know, and I wouldn't hold it against them for needing more information, right? To me, it kind of boils down to the car, DNA, and his phone being off, and all those things just seem too coincidental. All right, now in trial, if something comes up that changes that in my mind, if Ann Taylor finds a smoking gun, maybe a picture of Bryan Kohberger in a different location at the time that the murders were being committed, we got to rethink our thoughts there. But I appreciate everybody. Angel D comes on with a $2 super chat, says no. You're trying to mess with my dyslexia. It says Po Buddies Nerfect. It almost got me. One of my buddies got me like that not too long ago. One of my buddies, let's see if he can catch my super hat. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. It is Kenny. What? I got it right. Like I said, sometimes I do think and wonder, maybe I am psychic. And that's all I got for you guys today. I'll leave it with that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back on probably more frequently, guys. I think you're going to see me on here pretty often, whether I'm doing lives or videos or shorts. I'm really going to go, hard in the paint. And as my buddy Mark Davison says, and really try to push out as much as I possibly can and interview as many people as I can and talk about as many topics as I can. But I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a great night and a great weekend. Be safe, y'all.